This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, where we discuss the latest and greatest news in the wide world of sports. My name is Ben.
My name's Alex.
And I'm Anthony.
And guys, we have a historic, monumentous occasion going on right now. And no, I am not talking about the presidential election last night, but here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, we are recording the triple digit episode number 100.
100.
You know what, Alex?
What?
And Anthony, I'm not trying to throw shade. I know you're still kind of new, but Alex, I can honestly remember recording number 1 with you.
It was a good show, Anthony.
Back in May. I remember sitting
Next
to your
other.
left,
Yeah.
a spot that I'm not sitting at now, but sitting to your left, recording episode number 1, and now 99 episodes after that, are at 100. So it's a great day.
Yeah, it's pretty it's pretty epic. It's a big occasion here. We have balloons, streamers hanging from the rafters.
You may not hear it, but like the little celebrate good times. Come on. It's playing in the background.
It's on an ultimate loop.
It's on a 10-hour loop.
And every 6 minutes in between that song and it's being replayed, we get Kiss from a Rose by Seal.
Oh, how could I have forgotten? That's our tribute. That's our song, man.
That is mine and Ben's theme song, Anthony.
That's a great song.
Kiss
I love the
from
song.
a Rose from Batman Forever.
Right.
1995. All right.
Ding.
That's some celebration.
Yep.
Coming from Anthony's phone. It knows. It knows. Well, today's a good show and a great show for both of the content reasons and the 100th episode reasons.
Absolutely.
But today we're going to talk the new college football playoff rankings that came out last night. We'll talk about the Gold Glove winners in the AL and the NL. And we'll end the episode talking about the San Diego Chargers. They did something.
Well, the
You
city
guys
of
are
San
gonna hear
Diego
about
did something last night.
Yeah, against the Chargers.
Or should I say didn't do something?
Zing. Psh, psh.
It's like we need his phone. Little ding.
Yeah,
Like you need his sound effect there. But yes, as you mentioned, Alex, we will be talking about week number 2 of the college football playoff rankings revealed last night. No change at the top. 1, 2, 3 stay the same. Alabama, Clemson, and Michigan. But with Texas A&M losing to Mississippi State 35-28 on Saturday, we have a new number 4. We talked about it briefly on Monday, you and I did, Alex, and we weren't sure if the committee were going to throw us another curveball, kind of like they did with A&M ahead of Washington last week. And this week, they opted to not do that. They put Washington in at number 4, Ohio State at 5, Louisville 6.
I just want to say, so on the football show, we legitimately, both weeks, we tried to predict it, you know. First week I said Bama, Clemson, Michigan, Texas A&M, Washington, Ohio State. I called the top 6 perfectly. This week I said Alabama, Clemson, Michigan, Washington, Ohio State, Louisville. I called it back-to-back weeks. I'm clairvoyant, you guys. It's finally happening. I finally have superpowers. I also said that I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State maybe worked their way up there. I would understand the voting of the committee that are doing the whole strength of loss thing, but the inconsistency for the voting kind of seems to have come through. But I got my prediction correct. I did get 1 through 6 completely right. And I leave off at 6. I don't go any farther than that. I mean, everybody moved up one spot that was behind 4 all the way up into 8, and then Texas A&M dropped to 8, and everybody moved up one spot. So you just have Louisville and Wisconsin filling those next 2 spots. But I called it, Ben. I called it indeed.
Well, I guess you have bragging rights on me there. Honestly, I expected Ohio State to be ahead of Washington again because we saw last week the committee was not really sold on Washington. Ohio State with a huge 62-3 win over Nebraska, who was 10th at the time.
Yep.
So they obviously thought they were a pretty good team, 10th in the nation. Washington with a big win as well, but over a Cal team that just, like we've talked about all the time on the football show, sports show, they just can't stop anybody. They win 66-27. So I figured they'd probably put Ohio State ahead of Washington this week. And then maybe if Washington were to defeat USC, who they have upcoming this Saturday.
Currently ranked 20, which I don't understand in terms of Washington State being undefeated in conference play and on a 6-game winning streak to USC's 5-game winning streak and both being in second place. I don't understand them just jumping to 20, but I'll never understand these playoff rankings.
I think they kind of look at like an eye test of who they believe is better as opposed to what win streaks and previous rankings.
I know, but it's so hard to follow some kind of trend with the way they're thinking for these rankings. You know what I mean? I can never get quite a legitimate idea on how they rank these teams.
Yeah, it was always kind of weird. Like you said last week with Utah, they won 31-24 and they were ranked 5th. This week they beat Cal 66-27, so big, huge win, kind of like Ohio State did. But they were put on notice, I guess you could say, last week, oh, you're ranked 5th. We don't trust you. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So now we're going to win.
5th?
What?
5th?
Washington.
You said Utah.
Oh, sorry. I meant
okay.
Washington.
Yeah, it's okay. I was like Utah.
They beat Utah is what I meant. They beat Utah 31-24. Mm-hmm. So then they were put on notice, basically, like, hey, we don't trust you as much. And they're like, okay, that's fine. So then they go out and they win big against Cal. So that helps their standings. And maybe, like you said, it's kind of a week to week, like, oh, okay, this team looks a lot better now. They beat Cal by a lot, because if they'd beaten Cal by, say, something like a 45-40 or something like that, then I don't think.
I mean, it was close at one point,
right? But I think if it was like a close victory,
when
I
the
don't
game
think
kicked off,
no,
it was 0-0.
At the end of the first, it was actually kind of close.
I was kidding.
Enough to get me to kind of be like, "Come on, lose, Washington." I came to a realization too that people claim that the Pac-12 is weak this year. That's been the claim all year. And I kind of realized it's not necessarily weak. It's just not the same teams that are good.
Right.
Usually it's SC. It's UCLA, Stanford, Oregon. This year it's Washington State, USC now, Utah, Colorado, and Washington. There's still 5 teams now in the playoff rankings of the Pac-12. It's just not the big-time Stanford, Oregon kind of names, And then don't even get me started on Michigan. They're at 3, right? The best opponent they've played all year is Michigan State.
Well, they beat Colorado.
And then they beat Colorado, but Colorado is still not the best team in their division in that sense, in their conference. But people were all like, oh, the strength of schedule for Washington is just not that good. Washington had a 69% ranked, power schedule, their schedule. It was 69 or 62 because Michigan had the other one. They had the opposite, 69 or 62. Not a very strong schedule. Like, I'm not saying anything to Michigan. They obviously are one of the better teams in America. But you have to look at them and look at their schedule and say, okay, they beat Hawaii week 1. They played UCF. They beat Colorado before Colorado was really as good as they've gotten. They beat Penn State, so they're a little better. They beat Wisconsin when they were number 8, but they beat them by 1 touchdown. They beat Rutgers, Illinois, Michigan State. Then they played, what is that school? Let me get that real quick. Then they played Maryland.
They played Maryland.
Yeah,
but
the Terrapins, and then they played they're going to play Iowa this week. So I mean, yes, I get it. They're in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is not horrible this year. You have Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Minnesota's not bad. Nebraska, Wisconsin's not bad. But at the same time, if they're playing this whole, that's what I mean. I don't understand the ranking system because, strength schedule, Michigan's wasn't that much stronger.
I get what you're saying, but you're comparing them to Washington. Washington's best win was against Utah.
Yeah.
But look at Michigan. They have good wins against Colorado, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Michigan State. That's 4 wins right there that
Michigan
are good
State's
wins.
Not good this
okay,
year.
I'll take them out. So that's 3 good wins as opposed to 1 from Washington.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I don't understand these people, like the way these voters' ideas on what exactly is criteria and what's not.
But you also take into account the fact that it's Michigan, right? Like Michigan's one of those historic schools.
I believe me, I know. Yeah.
You talked about Pac-12, like UCLA, USC and stuff aren't winning. Michigan's Michigan, and you have the head coach, who's one of the most popular.
He's polarizing in a sense.
Sort of polarizing, but he's also one of those well-known college football coaches. Mm-hmm. Like basically him, Urban Meyer, and Nick Saban are like the 3 most well-known probably college football coaches there are right now.
Yeah.
And the other, the top 3, it's Alabama. Yeah, they're obviously the best. And Clemson was in the national title picture last year. Michigan
again.
Right. Michigan has Jim Harbaugh, and Washington, they're undefeated. Like the top 4 is still undefeated. Mm-hmm. And even with Washington, you talk about how it's the top of it's not, USC, UCLA, stuff like that. The top 2, at least in the northern part of the Pac-12, Washington and Washington State, you have 2 pretty well-known coaches in Chris Peterson and Mike Leake. Mm-hmm. So they both, have had run-ins before with teams that they're not with right now. So at least they're
Leach when he was at
Texas Tech.
Yeah.
I honestly expected Ohio State to be there because of what they did last week. But I think, and then obviously I would have thought Washington would move up with their win over USC because that's a ranked opponent. Washington against USC. USC's playing fantastic since they moved to Sam Darnold.
5 straight games.
Since they put Sam Darnold at cornerback, they've won 5 straight, as you mentioned. Kind of turned that program around. Clay Helton looks like he can maybe hold on to his job now.
Oh, he will, yeah, getting him ranked.
I would have thought they would have done that next week. But I think really when I look at Washington ahead of Ohio State, I think it's because the committee knows they made a mistake last week. They put A&M at 4, and then it's like, oh, what do they do right away? They lose their first game when they're ranked 4th. Like, obviously, they should not have been ranked there. So I think the committee's like, okay, we kind of messed up last week. Let's make sure we don't do that this week. But honestly, what these rankings say right now, kind of irrelevant. The top 5 all control their own destiny. The only team that doesn't is Louisville, and that's at 6. Wisconsin at 7. A&M at 8. I guess you can say Auburn do at 9 since they only have 1 loss in conference. If they win out and beat Bama in the Iron Bowl, they'll be in the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
So I guess they control their own destiny as well.
I think Washington does, obviously, too. I mean, they play USC, who's ranked 20th right now, and a better team, and they play Washington State. It's probably going to be their toughest back-to-back stretch all year. Because
they have the tough part of their schedule coming up at the end of the year, which I guess is kind of a good thing because if you're playing your best football against the best teams at the end of the year, that gives you something to look at.
Exactly.
But I still say if they lose one game, no matter what it is, I think they're out. I think they have to go undefeated.
I know what you mean. I think Washington needs to stay undefeated, and they need to get to the Pac-12 championship to stay. But obviously, they'd be undefeated. But
then you talk about the thing of before when it was Texas A&M when they were the 4th team, are you really going to put a team in there that didn't win their conference, right? Because A&M wouldn't have won the SEC because they're in the same thing as Alabama.
I think if it would have shaked out, like say everybody won last week that was in the top 6.
Right.
That's almost, but almost did, excluding Texas A&M, right? I say keep that going. Say everybody keeps winning, and then it gets down to like the last week. You would imagine they'd have to look at it that way.
Like
they'd be in a tough spot.
That's the same thing with like Michigan and Ohio State, right? Because eventually they're going to play each other in the last week of the season.
Yeah.
And even if Ohio State wins that game and Michigan loses, I don't think they'd have both of them in the top 4.
No, there's no way you can have both of them in the top 4 unless something crazy happens.
And the same thing you're talking about with Auburn or something like that. Like they're not going to vault them all the way up there. The same thing probably with Wisconsin. They're not going to vault them all the way up to the top 4. You basically just have the chance of Louisville, Ohio State, and Washington, assuming both those teams don't lose 2 games.
Yeah, I would say everybody controls their own destiny in the sense of, Alabama could probably lose and still stay in the top 4.
Right, yeah, they're probably,
Clemson maybe too. But yeah, Michigan, say they lose to Ohio State and Ohio State moves in there and say Washington and Louisville lose or something, I could see them both staying potentially right up there. But this is tricky because your top 4 teams are all undefeated. If one team loses, especially Washington, they're gone.
Yeah.
So you guys really don't think that if Auburn win out and beat Alabama and win the SEC, they're not getting in the top 4?
Oh, I think so because if you beat Bama and you win out, I think there's a potential for it, but you have to have so much happen. You have to probably have Wisconsin lose. Texas A&M might have to lose again, depending on their strength of their win against Ole Miss this week.
But they won the SEC. You would keep them out?
Sometimes that's the thing.
I don't see that happening. I don't think they're going to win out and beat Alabama. Like I don't think that's going to happen. Let's just say, for instance, that does.
Yeah, it would take a lot to happen other than just them winning out.
I really don't think so because a win against Bama, who in everybody's eyes is clearly the top team in the nation, and they win the SEC, which is the toughest conference in the nation, you have to put them in there, even with 2 losses.
But if you're going to do that, then are you dropping Alabama out? Like if Alabama's undefeated
the tricky thing.
Up until they lose, because if they lose the last game of the season, they've only had 1 loss, and then you're going to keep them in the top 4, you're going to put Auburn in the top 4, so that means either undefeated, say they all went out, Michigan, Clemson, or Washington, one of those is going to get knocked out, and you're going to have a 2-loss team in there.
I say Washington goes undefeated and Auburn wins out and wins the SEC championship game. I think it would come down to those 2. Because I still think unless Alabama goes out and loses by a lot to Auburn, like I don't know, like a blowout.
Right.
If it's a close game, you're still putting them in even if they lose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
if
they're
it's another 10-0 game.
You have to factor Michigan or Ohio State. The winner of that game is in.
Right.
And Clemson. Yeah. So that's 3 right there. So then you'd have to look at Washington or Auburn. That could be really interesting.
That's just, but if you do that, then you're basically just screaming SEC bias. No, you'd have two SEC teams and not a Pac-12 team. Like, forget about the USC not being in there. Like, you're screaming bias at that point.
But you're looking at the best teams. Does Washington compete with Alabama in your eyes?
Apparently, and to a lot of people in college football, Washington of the top 4 stand the best
because their offense is really, really good.
Their offense is really, really good, and it's a defense that can stop.
Yeah.
I really think
it's not that great for Bama this year.
I really think the top 3 teams in the country are as they're ranked. I think if Washington goes against any of them, I think they get destroyed.
I think the same thing. I think Ohio State would roll them. I think Michigan, Clemson, the way they play. But with Alabama, they actually match up somewhat good against Alabama, and they would if the season ended today, they would be the ones facing one another.
Right, 1 versus 4. It's going to be really interesting as we wind down 3-4 weeks left. Like I said, I think Auburn is the one wild card in here. I don't think they're going to actually defeat Alabama, but we've seen crazier things. They're playing very, very good right now. They're that one wild card in there because Louisville, I don't really think so because they would have to find a way for Clemson to lose 2 games, which is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Wisconsin would have to have teams lose a couple of games. A&M has really fallen off now. Yeah, Auburn's that one wild card in there that could kind of throw a wrench in everything. That could be really interesting.
I mean, Clemson, I don't think they're going to lose for the rest of the year. I mean, they have Pittsburgh coming up next. I don't think they're going to lose. Michigan's test is Ohio State. Washington has the next 2 weeks to be a stretch. I think Alabama beats Mississippi State, but sure, let's give, for the sake of your argument, let's say that Auburn is a potential close game for them. And then, I think Louisville could probably win out. They're playing Wake Forest next week, So I don't know. I think it's just hard for Auburn. There's a lot that has to go right for them. It's a kind of not necessarily a perfect scenario, but it's the dominoes need to fall a certain way for them.
And you talked about, do you think Washington can beat Alabama? Maybe not. But you saw in 2014, and I'm not saying that Peterson's as good a coach as Urban Meyer, but Ohio State, when they won in 2014, before the Big 12 championship game, Big 10, championship game, they only beat one ranked team in Michigan State, and then they ended up beating Alabama in the first round of the college football playoff. So I mean, it could happen,
anything can happen. I mean, that year we saw Ezekiel Elliott run for 200 yards 3 straight games. We've seen the Big 10 championship game, the semifinal, and the final. So he had a monster performance and kind of carried them. Can anybody on Washington do that? Like Jake Browning's had a great year, but can he do that against an Alabama defense that might be the best in the country?
I think he's the only. I think. Let me put it this way. I think that Washington, if they can stay at 4, yes, they would like to say go higher, but I think their best shot at it moving up is Alabama because Clemson poses too many threats to them they haven't really seen this year. Michigan, I think they could probably go toe-to-toe with Michigan. They're very similar teams. But Alabama, for once, Washington is a team from the Pac-12 that actually poses a threat to them in the sense of the way they play. Their offense is good, and they play from the pocket, but Browning's mobile enough to get out of the pocket as opposed to like when they used to get beat by mobile quarterbacks and they changed to that and they ruined any more mobile quarterback that was in there that couldn't necessarily throw like Auburn a few years ago. And then both of their defenses are very good, and Alabama's offense is much lighter this year than it has been in the past. Yeah, it can put up points, but we saw LSU this week, and a lot of people would say Washington's defense is better than LSU, and they only put up 10 points. And for a while they didn't put up any points. So I think as it stands right now, if the season ended as it is today with the countdown, I think Washington would be very comfortable going to play Alabama.
I'll say this: I think they got it right. I think the top 4 are right. I actually think Washington's best opponent would probably be Clemson because they're seeing a lot similar styles on offense in the Pac-12. Clemson, a spread team, mobile quarterback. You think of Oregon. You think of Arizona.
I don't necessarily mean matchups in terms of familiarity. I mean matchups in terms of scheme comfortability.
Also, if Ohio State beats Michigan, they're probably going to take Michigan out, and they're going to put Washington 3.
You think they'd move Washington up
and then Ohio State 4, so then they may face Clemson that way.
See, I think Washington's best bet would be to face Clemson because they're facing similar styles on offense.
Because Clemson's never going to surpass Alabama. Like Alabama, assuming they're going to be number 1. So
way. If Alabama wins out, they're done.
Even then,
and even then, they're like, it's 1.
We've seen Alabama lose one year and then get thrown back up to the number 1 spot, and then of course win last year.
It's
So.
going to be interesting. We'll have to see how everything plays out. But the top 5 teams all control their own destiny. The one wild card in there is Auburn. I give them a really small chance, but I mean, we've seen crazier things.
We have seen crazier things.
Unless Lamar Jackson loses his mind with Louisville and he just starts going like ridiculous. That's the only. And Ohio State and Michigan just have some weird like thing where like the committee doesn't love them. That's the only other way.
I still they'd have to get a lot of help with me and Louisville. They really don't have that big marquee win to me. Their best win is Florida State, and they already
but their
have.
best loss is a pretty solid loss.
Yeah,
I
that's the
agree.
thing.
And that's apparently what the conference, or not the conference, the committee really looks at.
I agree, but I think at the end of the day, you have to look at the games you're winning as opposed to the one. You only lost one game to Clemson by really only 1 yard. It was that 4th down, and they got stopped. So,
and that's a very close loss.
a very close
Literally.
loss. But I mean, I just look at. I mean, the eye test has to overtake everything. Is Louisville a better team than Ohio State? I'd probably say no. Is Louisville a better team than Washington? I'd probably say no. Michigan, Clemson, and Alabama, if they win, they're fine. So they'll be battling against Washington or Ohio State right now. Does Louisville look like a better team than both of them? I really don't think so.
But we've seen people, be it Vince Young or Cam Newton, like one quarterback basically like win a game by himself.
Yeah, in college, Lamar Jackson's the ultimate equalizer in my eyes because he can do it 2 ways. He can beat you running, he can beat you throwing.
Right.
And he really just carries that team, and their defense is pretty good. So it's possible, but I think they'd need a lot of help. I think if Michigan defeat Ohio State, you knock them out. So then the only really battle they have is against Washington. If Washington maybe lose the Pac-12 championship game, then they both sit at 1 loss, both non-conference winners. So how do you factor that in? Who's that 4th team you put in there? That could be interesting. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys on that one. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to take our first break and come back, and we're going to talk some Gold Glove Award winners in just a moment. Here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we're back here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, and it's time to tell you and unveil to you, if you have not seen already, the Gold Glove winners for the AL and the NL, respectively. Let's start with the AL. Ben, who are some of these fine gentlemen that won these awards?
So for the American League, we have the Gold Glove winners, as you mentioned. So pitcher, we have Dallas Keuchel of the Astros. This is his 3rd career Gold Glove. Salvador Perez, the catcher for the Royals, his 4th career Gold Glove. First baseman Mitch Moreland for the Rangers. He gets his 1st career Gold Glove, as well as second baseman Ian Kinsler of the Tigers.
Surprising that's his first, but for Kinsler.
Yeah, a good defensive second baseman with the Rangers for so long. Now he's doing it with the Tigers. No,
they haven't listed as Rangers on here. That's really weird.
No, he was part of the Prince Fielder trade.
I know, but somebody messed up on MLB.com.
Well, I mean,
it's your job.
If anything, I should just take their job because I know he's on the Tigers.
I was going to say, he's on the Tigers.
So third baseman Adrian Beltre, he's been a consistent, very good defensive third baseman. He wins his 5th career Gold Glove. Yeah, Francisco Lindor of the Indians gets his 1st Gold Glove there at shortstop. A really good young budding star.
Yeah, no surprise hit with him. There was a lot of really young studs in the defensive field during this World Series on both sides of the ball, and you'll see that represented in the NL1 in just a second.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how he can do with Puerto Rico in the World Baseball Classic coming up, as well as Javier Baez, a very good second baseman. So, left fielder Brett Gardner wins his 1st career Gold Glove for the Yankees. Kevin Kamer for the Rays wins his 2nd career Gold Glove out there in center field. And then Mookie Betts, his 1st career Gold Glove for the Red Sox. Mookie Betts also a finalist for the MVP in the American League. So really good for Mookie Betts.
I'll tell you 2 things. Mookie Betts, great year, Also had one of those hitting streaks. Kevin Kiemer, Kiemer, I always forget how to say his name. That dude looks like a model. Like, what is wrong? He came on the set yesterday after he won
So
the
he
award.
looks like me?
Yeah. He won the award, right? And he comes on. He's on ESPN Baseball Tonight. They did the live, like, unveiling of the Gold Gloves. And he's wearing this, like, kind of pink dress shirt. Like, or not pink. Maybe it was, like, baby blue. But the dude, like, it was like a medium. It was 2 sizes too small. He just looked like he's going to rip through it. I was like, is this guy auditioning for The Bachelor right now?
So he looks like Andres Galarraga, just ripping through his
shirt. Yeah, exactly. I was like, what is going on with this guy? But very good player. Dude is lights out fast out there in center field. So definitely somebody I would love to have on my team. All right, National League. Go ahead, my friend.
All right, so for the National League, we got Zach Greinke. He got his 3rd career for the Diamondbacks. Catcher, Buster Posey got his 1st career, snapping the 8-year run for Yadier Molina.
Yeah.
That's really like the only thing Posey has not to accomplish. He's MVP,
Rookie of the Year, MVP,
Rookie of the Year,
Silver Slugger,
World Series titles, now Gold Glove. Like, just literally the icing on the cake for his legacy. At such a young age, it's crazy to think.
Yeah, so he can still win a few more, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
First base, you got Anthony Rizzo getting his 1st career.
Mm-hmm.
Second base, Panic for the Giants, got his 1st. Third base, you got Nolan Arenado, got his 4th career in the 4 years he's been playing in the majors.
Mm-hmm.
Shortstop, Brendan Crawford again with the Giants, his 2nd career. Left field, you got Sterling Marte of the Pirates, got his 2nd career Gold Glove. Center field, Ender Inciarte, got his 1st for the Braves. And at least Hayward can get some Gold Gloves. He got his 4th career.
He can't hit, but he can get some Gold Gloves.
Hey, he delivered a World Series speech for the ages. Everybody said that he was the reason in that extra inning that they won the game because of the speech he made. So I guess you can say
find ways to be productive for your team,
contributing somehow. Exactly.
I mean, he was a great fielder too. And then one cool thing for me, and I'm sure you too, Anthony, and maybe your dad, for you, Ben, because he's a Giants fan. But it's the first time they've had a trio of Gold Glove winners since the '92 season. So that's pretty cool. And I forget who it was. I think 2002 since the last time they had the middle infield battery of second and shortstop win Gold Gloves. But yeah, I mean, you look at this team. This is not only is this a lot of solid defenders, it's a lot of really young guys.
Right.
You know, Buster's still in his 20s. Rizzo's young. Panic's young. Nolan Arenado, Crawford's. You know, they're all young. Starling Marte's getting a little up there, as well as Hayward and Greinke, but Ender and Ciarte, he's kind of young still. So, you know, you see a lot of promise for a lot of teams on this list.
The American League side too. Betts,
they kind of
Francisco
mixed,
Lindor.
but definitely young guys. Yeah, Francisco, Mookie Betts, Kevin Kmeyer, he's younger. Gardner's not exactly young, but he's not old either. They're still playing probably his prime. You see Moreland, Kinsler, and Beltran, and Perez, not necessarily the case, but still, yeah, a lot of young guys for teams that you can really look as a bright spot on a lot of these teams for sure. I mean, the Rays, they did have an off year, but you know, you look at Kmeyer and he's definitely somebody you can hope to build around. Mookie Betts, same thing. You know, they had a good year, but he's just another piece that they can hope to continue building a team now in the post Big Papi era. It's definitely a lot of successful players. Personally, I'm really excited for the MVPs to be announced. I mean, obviously we had the World Series MVP already with Zobrist, but I'm really excited for the ALCS. I'm sorry, the AL and the NL MVPs. See how those shape out. Because
we have our
favorites.
We have our finalists for those awards. They'll be announced within the next week and a half.
I believe I talked about them yesterday. I think I listed them out at least. Gary Sanchez, you know, for Rookie of the Year, you know, all those things. You know, if you like all the headliners of these awards, you know, I don't necessarily think he should win it, only playing 53 games. But the managers, you know, a lot of obvious choices for manager of the year. I think NL is going to go to Dave Roberts with what he did through all the injuries this year. I mean, yeah, you have Dusty Baker who did a great job, and obviously Joe Madden, but he won last year. I don't see him winning again. The American League, you have Terry Francona obviously up there, Buck Showalter, and then Jeff Bannister for the Rangers. I think maybe Bannister gets it for the year he had in the regular season.
I'd go with Francona with the Indians. No one really expected him to be there, and then they were literally a few outs away from the World Series.
I would say it's definitely more of a close race in the AL for manager of the year for sure. And like you said, Mookie Betts is in the running for the AL MVP. Jose Altuve, Mike Trout again. That one's going to be probably not as close as the National League, where most people have already written it off as Chris Bryant winning it. Danny Murphy and Corey Seager are both finalists as well. Corey Seager being a finalist for the NL Rookie of the Year too. I don't see him winning MVP, but I definitely see him as the winner of the Rookie of the Year in the NL. And then Cy Young, you know, that's pretty straightforward. You have Verlander, Kluber, and Porcello, and then you have Hendricks, Scherzer, and Lester. I think Hendricks might get that one, and I think it's going to be close between Kluber and Porcello. I think Verlander, not as good of a year because of the team not being as good.
I think you have to give it to Porcello by default. Didn't have a great year. His ERA is over 3, but he did finish 22-3.
Yeah, he has the
his
wins as
record was
opposed
great.
to Hendricks. He has the wins as opposed to Kluber's strikeout and ERA totals. Porcello has the wins. And then you kind of look at the flip-flop. Hendricks has the ERA as opposed to Lester's wins and Scherzer's strikeouts. So it's going to be interesting to see how those shape out. What do you think, Anthony? You have anything to say on those?
Yeah, so like I said, it looks pretty much like Bryant's going to get the MVP.
Yeah, I feel like that was written off in September.
And it's probably going to be Mike Trout, probably, because MVP for the Red Sox, for Mookie Betts, like you could probably, even though he's the top 3 and Ortiz isn't, they probably gave a couple of votes to Ortiz. Altuve, he was, kind of in the same boat as Mike Trout, as to where like not making the playoffs, not going deep, anything else like that. Mike Trout is someone everybody knows. His numbers are still Mike Troutian, like it's still in that range. You get something like Justin Verlander didn't have that good of a year, so he's probably not going to win in the AL. Hendricks has been pretty much like, the whole pitching staff for the Cubs has been up there. Lester didn't have as good of a year, and Scherzer has the strikeouts, but you probably still go with Hendricks. You probably do go with Francona with the Indians because of all the injuries that he's had to deal with the whole year. NL, you could go with him with Dave Roberts because he also has the rookies like Seager and Maeda to do that. Maybe you give it to Joe Madden just because he led the best team in baseball, so maybe you kind of like make it like a Cubs kind of sweep of like you're going to get the NL MVP, you're going to get the coach, the manager of the year, and the World Series, kind of wrap it up like that. There's a couple things that are kind of close, but you can kind of guess on a lot of these awards.
Yeah, I would say definitely you can probably assume. I would say the only one I can't really get a really good grasp on would be American League Rookie of the Year.
Well, it's probably Sanchez, no?
He only played 53 games.
But he went insane for those 53 games.
He did, but you have to look at what Fulmer and Naquin did in more of a full resume of games for for the Tigers and the Indians.
I would give it to Michael Fulmer. As you mentioned, Sanchez did go in, but just didn't play enough for me. Michael Fulmer was doing it consistently all year. To be honest, I realized that Verlander's up there for the Cy Young Award, which I kind of am a little confused with. I would have thought there'd be like Zach Britton. Where's Zach Britton? He's not even a finalist for this award. I thought that was a little surprising. I thought that was kind of surprising. But honestly, Justin Verlander being up there, it's kind of shocked me. But really, Michael Fulmer, in my eyes, was the Tigers' best pitcher all year. Most consistent. Didn't really have a fall off as a rookie. I would give him the American League Rookie of the Year. And you talked about Mike Trout for the MVP. I think it should go to Jose Altuve. Led the majors in hitting. He, for once, actually contributed with the bat. He had some pop this year, over 24 home runs.
Right.
Second in the majors in stolen bases. He had the most hits this year. He had an absolutely fantastic year. I realize Betts did a lot. Trout you can basically pencil him into this award every year for the next decade.
He's always around. If he doesn't win it, he's still around it.
Yeah.
So I would probably go with Altuve, but I was surprised that Zach Britton got left off the Cy Young Award list.
Yeah, I was a little surprised as well. We'll have to see how they shake out. I mean, I'm excited. I love this time of year for baseball. Silver Sluggers are coming up, I believe, too. So can't wait, guys. Can't wait. But let's take our last break.
Can't wait.
Oh, my Lord. Let's take our last break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk some San Diego Chargers relevant news, talking about some building and some not building. In just a moment here at the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Okay, guys, before we talk the Chargers, breaking news, the UFC has taken away the light heavyweight championship from John Jones, facing his second drug suspension for a year now.
Was that official today? Because I felt like I read that the other day.
It's official today. I think we all saw it coming.
He's banned until it goes retroactive.
It's a year.
From July.
So, yeah, retroactive to July. Okay.
Yeah, so they strip him again. So, obviously, Daniel Cormier, once again, I don't know if you want to interim in quotes because he's been the interim heavyweight champion for a while now. But so they stripped John Jones again of his light heavyweight title. Not a real surprise there, but nevertheless, it did come out. So, all right, guys. So Chargers Stadium fails last night in the election. So The ballot, it was Measure C to try and pass the team's $1.8 billion downtown stadium and convention center, which it was trying to raise hotel taxes from 12.5% to 16.5% to try and secure a little over $1 billion in bonds to pay for the project. Well, it didn't go as planned. It only got 42.5% approval, so it got shut down pretty convincingly. So now that opens the door for a chance to go to L.A. and join the Rams in L.A. for the San Diego Chargers. They have until about January to try and figure out something to do until that vote goes on. And then if they obviously turn it down, then that opens the door for the Raiders. But they have their eyes set on Las Vegas right now. So what do we think? I honestly think San Diego Chargers are done. I think we're going to see the L.A. Chargers soon enough. Do you see what L.A.'s already doing for the Rams? Although they're not really successful on the field, Alex, you and I talked about it when we did the Forbes top valuable franchises list. The Rams went from 26 to 8 just within 1 year because of their move to L.A.
I know what you mean. I think there's so many people who are just. I mean, San Diego's just so down on that right now, and they're kind of like, "Well, okay, move. We dare you to." You know what I mean? And I think, there's a spot for them, but they're saying, they have to get votes from the owners and all of that again. I feel like this is gonna be going on for a few years, not necessarily with Chargers, but we saw this for as far back now as 2 years with all these. Okay, we're gonna vote for this and that and try to get relocated. I think the trickiest thing is, you didn't get any kind of votes from San Diego, but that doesn't mean they're not going to. The Chargers want to stay in San Diego, but they're not going to stay there if they don't get a stadium. Qualcomm isn't exactly the worst stadium in the league. Believe me, that's probably the Coliseum in Oakland, but in terms of outdated and needs work. But they need a new stadium in their eyes, and if that's not going to happen in San Diego, they're going to do everything they can to, as a business in a sense, they need to go somewhere where they're going to be able to make money and get revenue, and that's not happening at Qualcomm for them right now. At least not where they want it to, at least the way they want it to,
This kind of reminds me of Sacramento, actually, because we're here. How many times did the Maloofs and the Kings try to pass a new city-built stadium? How many times did they try and pass that, and it never did? And then
4 or 5 times.
And then as soon as the real serious threat of them jumping to Seattle was there, that's when David Stern and Kevin Johnson, who's the mayor, finally turned things around and finally got something done. San Diego's kind of on their last resort now. Like I said, they have until January 15th, actually, to figure out if they want to go to L.A., and then it's up to the Raiders as well. But so they're kind of like on their last resort here, and it still didn't get done. I don't see how it does now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. What about you, Anthony?
Yeah, so it's looking like, basically, you might have the Sacramento Kings situation where you have that last-ditch effort, or you can have what happened with the Rams or with the Seattle Supersonics, where it's basically just like, I dare you, I dare you, I dare you. Okay, cool.
Bye.
We're gone.
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's one of those things where, Spanos.
Or the Expos, even.
Or the Expos, yeah, when they went to Washington from Montreal, yeah. But, you get Dean Spanos coming out and making a statement basically saying, not saying anything really, just basically saying, like, we'll weigh our options.
Yeah.
But, you have until, what you said, January 15th? Yeah, to basically figure out what they're going to do. And they're basically going to go to Kroenke and, Jerry Jones and the people that, have the biggest sway craft as far as the owners go. And they're basically going to look at it and be like, is it cool if we do this? Can we move to Los Angeles? And they're going to be the deciding factor of yay or nay, because you have to have a majority vote with the other owners. And you talked about it's going to kind of them and the Raiders, the two trying to figure out L.A. Raiders probably aren't going to try to go to L.A. because they already have their thing going with Las Vegas, which is basically approved them going there. So you basically just have San Diego in kind of limbo of whether they want to go to L.A., because also the thing with Spanos, what he's going to try and negotiate with Kroenke is basically like Kroenke wants to have everything, right, and not split any of the revenue once he gets to L.A., because that's what will happen. Whatever shine the Rams have right now will get kind of dulled a little bit if you get another team in there, and if the Rams still have their 8-8 coach Jeff Fisher, now you get at least a fun team in San Diego with Phillip Rivers and all the games being close. Like, maybe Kroenke doesn't want to have that come into Los Angeles as well.
I really don't think this is going to happen. I think the financial gain they'll have by going to L.A. We've seen it with the Rams already. 1 year. They're already a top 10 franchise financially in the league when they were at the bottom just after 1 year. The Chargers are already ahead of the Rams as far as a team aspect and competitiveness. the Chargers are probably the best 3-5 team this league has ever seen, honestly. And now you put them in LA with a chance to grow it. It's still similar, close in proximity to San Diego, only a couple hours away by drive. So they're not having to move entirely everything. So you're still going to have that market in the Southern California region. I think it's just a match made in heaven, as well as, I mean, Phillip Rivers not really fond of going to LA from San Diego, which I find kind of weird. It's just a little bit away, but he's talking about how he won't ever play if they're in LA. I don't see that happening as much as he wants to try and, like you said, like, okay, then that's fine. Then don't do it, and then they actually do it. I don't see that happening with Phillip Rivers, but it's just, I mean, the city is not voting to keep them here to build a new stadium. It's over, I think, seriously.
But you've seen, you talk about how popular the Rams are now that they're in Los Angeles, but that's also, dependent on how good they continue to be, because if you're a crappy team, LA is kind of like Miami in that aspect, where like if you're not fun or you're not competitive, they're not going to stay with you. They have too many other things. The Lakers are getting better. The Dodgers are the Dodgers. Like, you kind of have to have a competitive product for them to stay there. Like the Raiders tried to go to LA, and that lasted for a little over a decade before they moved back to Oakland. Like, you need a team that's winning, or at the very least exciting.
The Chargers are that. The Rams
are that.
They can be exciting. I mean, they've been exciting before. A couple years ago, about 2009, 2007, through those 3 years, they were getting in the playoffs. Getting to AFC title games every once in a while. Not frequently, but they played in a couple. They got up to the divisional playoffs a couple of years in a row. So
right.
They were definitely exciting then, but it's definitely been a few years since then in that aspect. It's not the same team as that team. I feel like that team, when they were winning, could have got this vote kind of settled, pretty quickly.
And there's still some excitement with the Rams. You have to see how Jared Goff kind of progresses. I think with the next couple of weeks, we'll honestly see him starting. But obviously, Jeff Fisher already named Case Keenum their starter this week, but then next week they will actually have a home game. So that's what you want to do. You want to start your young hopeful franchise quarterback in front of your own home fans. So I guess there's a little bit of hope with that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we'll have to wait and see. But the Chargers not looking too good as far as staying in San Diego as it stands right now.
Yeah, as it stands right now. And if anything goes to come on that, of course, we will let you know. But until then, we are done for the day. Anthony and I will be back tomorrow. We'll preview Thursday Night Football game. We'll talk any news, anything that happens in the meantime between then and now. But as always, it's time to take our 24-hour break. We'll be back tomorrow to discuss great sports. Ben, you'll be back on
Friday, buddy. Me and Anthony will be here.
Yep.
Holding it down since you will not be.
Holding it down for the underground. I like it. We'd like to thank you guys for listening, as always. For my friends here, I am Alex.
My name is Ben.
And I'm Anthony.
We'll see you guys tomorrow, Ben. Catch you on Friday. And you guys have a good rest of your day and enjoy your sports.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.